Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats. And I am delighted today to be joined by none other than the Minty McMintersons of Mintzville, Mr. David Mintz.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Hello.
Hello.
I know I had to drag you kicking and screaming onto this podcast. I mean that, and
I think
the messages I got
to appear on this podcast. If you're not in the first 7 episodes of the season, then it's just a cameo role. But you know what? That's also nice, I suppose.
Dude, I'm running the longest ever season ever. The thing I used to publish all this stuff, asked like what season you're on, and it's like I'm gonna always be on season 1. I want to get to like season 1, episode 1263. Kristjan once again discusses the benefits of an integrated tech stack.
That sounds like thrilling stuff.
You know, we're living the dream, breaking barriers, delivering fresh and unrivaled content.
Pushing that envelope.
Hello, my friend.
It's nice to be with you. You're a lovely man.
I mean, you know, kind of. Sometimes. Most of the time. Maybe. So, dude, I think, you know, probably the biggest question on everyone's lips and kicking around their brain, I think whenever anyone sees you being interviewed on a program, has got to be semi-PG version, because we allow swearing on this podcast. What is it like to work with the shy, demure, and retiring Mr. Simon Whale on a day-to-day basis?
Well, semi-swearing, it's nuts, man. It's crazy. I think. I mean, we've had a very honest chat about this off camera, and I will give you the more vanilla version of it. He's a maverick in every sense of the word, and when you see him out in a sort of social context at a conference, working the room, there are two things that will strike you about him. If you catch him at an odd semi-sober moment, he is probably one of the most intelligent people that you will ever get to have a conversation with in this industry. And if you underestimate him, you do so at your own.
You know, that is something I think over the years I've repeatedly heard from people who've got to know Whaley socially on the conference scene, and so they know slightly crazy conference Whaley, and then all of a sudden they're sat at like a very serious meeting or a board thing with on it Whaley, and they're like, who's the guy who looks like Whaley sat over there?
There is a reason why that all of those companies want him in their boardrooms, and I think he's got a lot to give. Despite he always, if you have a conversation with him or you ever catch him on a podcast, they'll always sort of say, "Oh, well, I'm a relative sort of industry outsider. I've never done the actual day job of a state agency," but he's been in this industry now for sort of more than 3 decades, and can put most of us to shame in terms of what he knows. And he still claims to know nothing, but he knows an immense amount. And I think his true skill is actually sort of connecting people. His little black book, and everybody knows him, and he knows everybody. And I think one of the nicer things I could say about him is that when you meet him socially, he's not precious. So there's a lot of people in this industry who, if you don't know them already, you can't just go up to them and sort of act pally with them. With Whaley, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be the guy that empties the bins. You could be the MD of a multi-branch. He doesn't care, big or how small, what you've got in your bank account. And I think that's a lovely thing. I remember when I first came to work for him, I'd kind of just walked out of a state agency world where we would seriously.
I was going to say, what were those first few days like? Because I'm like,
I'll give you this story. This will make you shudder because you'll hate this kind of shit. And it took me a while to deprogram myself, but I came out of a state agency where we would debate whether or not the customer values you based on what car you drive to the appointment. So I always drove. I as the principal kind of valuer, my business partner would always make sure that I had lovely cars. I mean, way lovelier than I could ever afford to drive. So I drove BMWs, Mercedes, whatever, but they're all lovely. And the purpose of that was that people must see you as kind of successful enough to drive, you know. And when I turned around, when I came to work for Whaley, I said to him, look, obviously I'm losing the car from the agency because I won't have that anymore. I'm just about to lease another car. Do I need to look the part? Is there a particular car? And he was like, listen, anyone that's willing to judge you based on what car you drive is not worth dealing with. And I was like, right, I'll take that. And
so I think leads you to an interesting thing. One, the you know, talking about agency, the eternal debate of how you present yourself. So, you know, a car is part of that, what your office looks like, blah, blah, blah. But I still find this debate about, should you wear a suit? Should you wear a tie? I still find it quite interesting, I find it interesting how polarizing it is with some people, because like,
it depends.
My position's always been wear what you feel comfortable in.
Yeah, I suppose so. I think
in the past, I remember we had a guy we employed years ago, and he was like, he'd done sales jobs all his life, he'd done agency and other stuff, and he was like, I like being smart. I like my 3-piece suits. I feel like that's going to go against the grain here. And it was like, no, dude, you want to rock up in a 3-piece suit? You rock up in a 3-piece suit. You do you, my friend.
I think it depends on who you are and your personality and whether or not you can pull off what you're wearing. And by that, I mean that if Kristjan Byfield were to turn up at my house to do a valuation in Shoreditch, dressed in a 3-piece suit and a top hat, I mean, actually, I think you'd look amazing. To be quite honest, I like the sound of that. But to be honest, there are certain people who, when they're dressed up to the nines, so that when there was a Right Moves rep called Phil Bates. He's still out there. I think he now works in HR, but he was our Right Moves rep for years. And his signature was that he would always wear like a waistcoat. And now, if I wore a waistcoat, I would look like an overweight snooker player that is way past his best and throw me out your house, right? But he can pull it off. So I guess and likewise, I kind of, generally speaking, when I go out and see people in their homes, I will wear a suit because that does make me look slightly smarter. When I dress down, I tend to look like the caretaker. So to me, I think it's what you can pull off. I think also if your audience, like where you are in Shoreditch, it's Trendyville. So
this is an interesting thing. This thing about where you are, like I've had this debate quite a bit, particularly with London agents. I remember actually having quite a surprisingly impassioned conversation with someone a few years ago at EA Masters, and they were like Chelsea and Kensington agent. And they were like, oh, you couldn't possibly go to evaluation in our neighbourhood dressed like that. To which I was like, I beg to differ. I was like, you know, do all your billionaire clients walk in suits? And they were like, no, oh God, no. They all come in jeans and trainers and looking quite scruffy. And it's like, cool. So you don't think dressing like your billionaire clients might work? But for me, like not wearing a suit started way before we started base, was during my first agency job in Islington, and everyone, and I mean everyone, was suited and booted, and that was really in like Foxton's prior tendency. That was when Foxton's was this kind of almost unstoppable force at that point in London. Early 2000s, they were just eating everything alive. And my thing was, you know, if I'm going to be one of 3, 4, 5 agents, the landlord's coming through the door, you know, how do I stand out? And it was like, you know, it was that thing of, I mean,
yeah,
we all kind of do the same job from a customer perspective.
Yeah,
like,
you know what?
We can all sit here and drone on and on about the nuances of what we do and blah, blah, blah. But from a customer perspective, they think we all pretty much do the same job.
We went, you know, at Normie here in Manchester, when we took over the business, we took over a very stuffy old-fashioned business. It was the sort of place that your grandma and grandpa would have sold the house with. You might have struggled to make that leap. So one of the things we had to do is kind of drag it kicking and screaming into this day and age. And there was a couple of ways that we did it. But we had a very successful competition, a company who drove around in branded minis. I wonder where they got that idea from.
I mean, it's so original.
They thought it was, and everything was a fresh perspective and all this.
Yeah.
One of their signature
of someone else's.
One of their signature moves was that they would turn up to your house in jeans and whatever they were wearing. They dressed down, and it didn't stop them from winning business. So I think you have to look the part. It needs to all fit together. There's no point in you walking in and you not feeling comfortable with what you're wearing.
See, and that's my thing. I think it's about how you feel. Like, it's genuinely about how you feel. I mean, that said, it's also about your mindset, right? Like, you could dress me in anything.
And I suppose
in reality, I'd walk in through a door and anything and be like, hello.
But it's also the band that you're in. So if you're in the Beatles, you need to dress like one of the Beatles. And if you're in Iron Maiden, you need to dress like one of Iron Maiden. So the company, the band, the brand, you need to fit that image too. So I guess bass is quite funky. So everybody dresses the part. But if bass was a bit stuffy or a bit more traditional, then I guess you would also set a uniform policy or whatever.
Yeah, it would kind of be juxtaposed, right? If you went, if we were called just a little light or something.
You need and actually, I think that's probably something that, in coaching perspectives, you probably sort of look at what happens in sports. The reason why, there's a team identity. There absolutely is. And I think it helps to galvanize the team if everybody not looks the same. You need a bit of diversity, but you need to have a similar-ish dress code. But it's bollocks. People will give you their business, whether you're in your pajamas or but it's how you feel and whether you look the part.
It's how you feel, because how you feel is how you'll come across, right? And it's how people react to you.
And there's
your confidence, your tone, your whatever.
Yeah, there's casual and there's casual. So when I turn up to your house in a hoodie, dressed a little bit like I am today, I'm sorry for turning up to your podcast like that. But
how very dare you? I'm in my pristine dinner suit.
But if I did, let me give you an example of a very good-looking man who's normally casual. Someone like
enough about me.
No, forget you. No, we have to use a different. Spencer Lawrence.
Mr. Spencer.
His version of casual. His version of casual still looks quite smart. Ben Madden has got a weird thing going on where he's sort of it's casual up top and it's business down the bottom. So he's wearing business trousers with.
I think that's just simply because he can't fit those fucking biceps in a suit.
It's and if you're gonna have biceps like that, why hide it?
Well, exactly. If I was him, I'd be going around in a fucking Rabsy Nesbitt kind of esque string vest. I'd be like,
so I don't think it matters. There is something of the sort of the clientele that you do service, right? I'll never forget going out to somebody's house and they called me afterwards to say, sorry, but I'm not giving you the business. And I had the audacity to ask why. And they said, well, you were very good and you seem to know a lot about the local area. And there's no doubt that you could sell this house, but you weren't wearing a tie. And I was like, and that makes the difference to you. And this particular person, they were they were much older and they were very, very traditional. To them, it meant, so you will, look, I would argue that anybody who's going to be that pedantic, you do not want as a customer in the film.
Oh my Lord, can you imagine?
Can you imagine the viewings there? Because for all the...
They would be there and correct everything you said wrong right in front of the buyer.
For all that we're able to control how we look and act on a professional appointment, once the viewers come into the house, it's like you've let the animals loose in the zoo because they have a mind of their own. They will say whatever they want to say.
How dare they?
And there's a certain point where they just, and I actually love this about doing viewings. if you sort of go quiet for a bit and let them get into their zone where they can, especially couples who are communicating with each other, and they feel comfortable enough to sort of say things about the house, you'll get to a point where they'll kind of open the door to the bathroom and go, "Oh my God, I couldn't take a shit in here. I couldn't." Now we live, warning to everybody, we now live in the day and age of extremely inexpensive Ring doorbells and lots of nanny cams and all of that. You cannot get away with any of this stuff anymore. So all that stuff that comes out on viewings, one of my colleagues called the vendor to say, so viewing went well and they're thinking about it, and the vendor goes, "That's not what I heard on the Ring doorbell," because they were having a conversation on the driveway, and the conversation was, "Well, we like it, but we,
Do you like it? Not really. Are you going to offer? Absolutely not.
I think, really good tip to anybody in property is just assume that somebody's always watching and listening. I know it's creepy, but just assume that somebody's always watching and listening.
Possibly Simon Weil. We keep on getting...
If Simon Weil's listening, then just...
I was at my base and no one answered.
Let Simon Weil... Let it go. As to get back to your original question of what it's like to work for Simon Weil, he, behind closed doors, he is like any other boss sometimes. I mean, he won't like to hear me say that, but he can be,
I mean, I'm a boss, so I'm assuming you mean like all bosses, we're just fabulous, incredible.
I need this doing. Great. Okay. Is it done yet? No, you just asked me to do it now. I'm going to have to do it. Right. Do you know what?
Is it done now?
There's all of that. Look,
but that's fine because you work for such a critically organised and well-planned individual that all that stuff, you got plenty of lead-in time.
I'm going to give you a football analogy that only Simon Weil would perhaps appreciate. Just because you are a star striker and you will score loads of goals does not mean you're going to be the best manager in the world. You might be a better player than you are a manager. And I think that I come across...
I don't think he's the first person to use that.
No, probably not. But I think there's plenty of companies out there who have got, there's bosses at the helm that are amazing at what they do. They're just not the best managers in the world. So
I don't think I'm Anne and I have questions over our management skills. I think we're good leaders in terms of what is the brand, what is the business, where are we going, and like strategic decisions, but we struggle with the day-to-day management stuff.
I think everybody does, because it's people skills at the end of the day, and then you have to kind of, the commercial realities also hit home. So you want to bend over backwards to be groovy, cool and woke and whatever it is that you consider yourself to be, and make it an environment that everybody's really comfortable in. We're all a team, we're all a family. And then you'll go, hang on, this member of the family is not bringing in as much as the others. I'm sorry, Grandma, but
you're about your inheritance.
and do you know what? That's one of the things that I sit in all these Facebook groups, as I know you do as well, where estate agents will talk about management styles and so on. And I saw somebody sort of say, I hate it when people say, at such and such a company, we're family. I think that's bollocks, because you're not a family, and at the end of the day, you can't afford to treat.
Have you seen how some families treat one another?
I know how families treat one another. It's the worst, especially where money's involved.
I think there are people out there going, "Fucking hell, I wish my family treated myself."
You only need to try and sell a couple of houses that are going through probate to understand how complicated family structures can be.
The other thing you only have to do is to run any sort of business, and after 10 years look back and see how much business your family has given you. Because I guarantee for 98% of people, it's either going to be fuck all, or what has been generated is like, but you give me like 80% off, right? Because
it's tough acting for family. I've done it, and you always end up regretting it in the end somehow.
I've done a couple of bits of family, but I think the thing I find fascinating is like we've had base now nearly 22 years. I've been doing this job for 24 years. Like, the amount of times, like, I'll be having a conversation with my family and something will come up about some property thing that they've been trying to deal with. And it's like, I mean, like, a few years ago, I was out for dinner with my sister.
Yeah.
This was at the time when we used to run a full, like, refurb team, which we kind of scaled back on now. But at the time, we were doing projects with people left, right, and centre. Didn't matter. Redeck, full bathroom, whatever. And I recently just helped my sister sell her flat and helped negotiate the buy for, like, next to nothing. We go out for dinner, and my sister goes, "Oh, you won't believe the troubles I'm having." And we're like, "Oh, yeah, what's going on?" "Well, I brought this guy in to do my bathroom, and it's chaos." I mean, I was just sat there like, sorry.
Did you not think to ask?
No, like,
it's difficult, but that's family. You can't choose them.
I also find that psychology, right? And this, just generally business speaking, I find the psychology, this whole friends and family thing, fascinating, because talk to a friend or family who's got someone who's doing some sort of business, whether it's selling crap from their bedroom or employing people and running an office and blah blah blah, whatever. And they'll be very proud. They'll tell their friends and their family and about how proud they are that little Johnny or little Samantha or whoever the hell they are, what they're doing, and isn't it amazing, and blah blah blah. And 6 months later, they'll be talking to said friend who's looking to sell. Will they mention little Johnny or little Samantha once in that conversation? No. If it comes up in the conversation, what's probably the first thing they'll say? "Let me have a word with them. I'm sure I can get them to massively reduce the price."
It's interesting when you act for friends. When you do end up acting for friends, it shows you somehow it's that test of friendship. Because ultimately, if the business that we're in, as I believe it is all down to trust. And friendship actually should be the truest form of trust, shouldn't it? Really, that's what it's all about. You then find out which of your friends actually do trust you, or which of them are being arseholes trying to second guess everything you're saying, asking for second opinion. I just called somebody else to ask. Like, in that situation, you then find out actually those people are not worth dealing with. They're very nice to have dinner with every 3 months or whatever it may be, but they're not friends.
It's funny. I have this rule with friends, and I'm sure there've been a couple of exceptions over the years, but I have a general rule with friends. Like, if a friend offers something, they do something, or I'm like, "Oh, I know." Like, a couple of years ago, one of our friends, one of our like school parent friend circle, makes these really nice bougie soaps, handmade soaps at home. And it was like, cool, do you know what? Like, we don't do big presents in the family because we're like, just I don't need another pair of socks or another bar of chocolate or just something or a book that I'll never read. So we were like, do you know what? Everyone uses soap and these are really, really nice. So we'll buy everyone a soap. And we went to them and I was like, we'll buy like 25. And she was like, oh, you're buying 25, like, let me see what I can do for you on a discount. And I was like, why? Well, I mean, you're buying a lot and you're a friend. And I was like, so? You're selling a product that I think is going to make a really nice present. So... But
I guess we all do it, don't we? We all think somewhere it has been drummed into us that it's a good thing. I mean, and with me, genetically, I think it's probably programmed into us that it might. I know it's a horrible stereotype, but it's good to try and grab yourself a bit of a bargain. And you would therefore expect by extension of that perhaps when you're using a friend to do it. But I think it's the worst money off that you can ever get, because I think your friend ends up resenting it. So if they've discounted a service to you, you never feel like you're getting the full service.
Yeah.
Because or worse. I mean, I know with me, I go the other way. I'll probably give you even better than my normal service, and I'm charging you a pittance. And I will actually, at the end of the day, feel a little bit hard done by. I won't say anything because I'm such a nice man, but that's no good for people. So I think treat everybody, including family, charge them all a full fee.
Yeah, but also
and if they don't want to deal with you.
But also, kind of, if you're talking to family, just engage a little bit of thought before you engage that conversation. If you're not good on the spot, maybe do a bit of prep. So we let my sister's house about 6 months ago. She tried to sell it, didn't work. I mean, it was great. She totally ignored my advice for the first 2 estate agents trying to sell it. Finally listened on the third, got Vicky and location on the case.
Yeah.
They were, as expected, fucking amazing. I think the first 2 agents over 4 months did something like 10 viewings. And on the first weekend, Vicky, location did a block viewing with 35 people and got 3 offers. So I was like, you see what happens? But anyway, didn't get the price she wanted. So decided, right, not going to sell now. So I went groveling to Vicky and the team being like, sorry. They're like, don't worry, 2 sales enough. We get it. Now, I'd also been talking for months with my sister, right, about, if you don't want to sell, this is what you're going to, you could let, but you need to consider tax and renters' rights act and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, doing all this. So sure enough, my sister tells me, right, not going to sell, we're going to let it out. So I'm waiting for the call. And in comes the call from my sister. So, hey, Krish, I've been talking to some of the local agents. I'm like, okay, good place to start. You're getting your research, you're knowing the landscape, you're checking how to call your brother out on shit. Absolutely fine. Now, bearing in mind, not only is this woman my sister, she worked for me at base for a year. The next line that fell out of her face was, so a local agent's offered me let and fully managed, all-inclusive at 8%. Sounds like a bit of a rip-off to me.
Oh, my word.
To which I nearly fucking laughed myself out of the seat. Because for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure there are some agents who might listen to this and be like, 8%? Yeah, I mean, that's the going rate. I immediately turned around to Tanya and I was like, Tanya, you remember we charge 18%? Yeah, not 8, 18, 10 and 8. Oh. Yeah. Where do you go from that? I mean, look, in the end, I went back to my sister and I was like, look, I'd rather, because it's you, match that fee and we do it, but on the condition that you just let us get on and do our job. Not going to consult you on anything. We will just get it done. I said, because I'd rather do that than you go off to an agent, which in London, if they're doing 8%, including that, fully managed, they don't have a lot of faith in their own service. Compliance, I don't think it's going to be there. Navigating the Renters' Rights Act, they're probably one of the agents still adamant it's not going to happen. So I was just like, at the end of the day, rather than pick this all apart and have my sister weeping down the phone because she's not had rent for the last 3 months and the agent's not returning her calls. But I find this whole friends and family thing fascinating. Like, once in a blue moon, you'll meet a family or a mate, not necessarily like that benefits us, but, in the circle of people doing business. And you're like, that is what family allyship and that is what friendship looks like when you've got a friend that is running, building, growing, starting a business.
Yeah.
Is all in.
No, 100%.
Give them everything. I don't want a discount. You know what? I'll pay everything. When you become a millionaire, just, treat me then. Take me on a holiday to the Bahamas for a week or something. But right now, shits and giggles. So, look, I queued up this article before we got started because we're talking about the workplace and attitudes and stuff. And following on from my little contribution to the podcast, Kerfuffle podcast.
Yes, thank you.
Which, for those who didn't see that, I asked you guys for your thoughts on a LinkedIn post that Mr. Russell Jarvis of Rayner personnel had shared on LinkedIn. And that was a prospective client or business that had approached them with a view to them doing their recruitment. And they had, I don't know if they'd put it in writing, but they had stated to him, we don't hire women. And Russell, to his credit, had gone online and relayed this event and said, obviously, we turned them away. But this was, and I believe he took it this way. This was in no way calling Russell out, because I think anyone who just brings this stuff to air and shows that it is still happening. For those people who are like, do we need a women in a estate agency event? Do women really need support in the workplace? Yeah. But as I said on that, it's good to see it called out, but can we be going further? They weren't a client. Should they be named or shamed for something that egregious? Because they're not a client. You don't owe any protection to them. Would other people be sensitive? I'd like to think the only company that might go, oh, I'm not contacting them, would be a company with similar attitudes or beliefs in their business. So
I think you've probably got some. I think that's a basic legal question, really, as to whether or not.
Or do you silently report them? That's my other thing. I think
if the practice is illegal, so I'll remind the estate agents who are watching this that you have a duty not to discriminate against people making offers on houses or wanting to view houses. You can't turn people away based on their gender, their colour of their skin, their ethnicity, what they're wearing. It doesn't matter. We just can't do that anymore.
Wearing you can do, I think, right? You can have that detailed in your terms of employment of dress code.
Yeah, I think you probably could do, but just looking in general, I think you can't. Yeah. You have a legal duty to sort of say, right, well, It's
not about the person; it's about the.
So I have turned away. Sellers in the past who have said to me, I'm very happy to go ahead. Before we go on the market, I'd just like to say there's certain people that I don't want to sell this house to, because I won't do that to my neighbours.
Yeah.
And I've instantly at that point stood up and gone, thank you very much. We won't be doing business together. And if then pushed as to why, then you give them a piece of your mind, because at that point you ain't got nothing to lose.
Yeah, and if they don't get why you're immediately standing up, then they probably explain.
Then I think that's up to you to draw that line, and I think you can do it. As for publicly naming and shaming, we haven't got that far in our progressive movement yet to be able to get to the point where all of us are very comfortable to put our commercial hats to one side and go, it doesn't matter. I spoke about, where did I speak about this? It might have been on the podcast. I just think it's a reality of this industry, and it's a sad reality of this industry, that you cannot be straight talking all the time. You can't necessarily say what you want to say, because you have to be mindful of not pissing off people. Now, I know you don't really care about that. But there are a lot of people who do. So what they will do, what Russell did, was going as far as he could, without actually causing either legal problems or actually getting to the point where you name and shame. And the other thing
that is better than saying nothing. Like, they did the right thing and turned them away, but then that could have been the end of it and not mentioned it. So it's better than nothing of sharing the fact.
Oh, completely. He did the right thing. I think there is something else that bothers me about naming and shaming, is that occasionally, if you're overzealous with naming and shaming, you could actually out somebody before they're actually guilty. Do you know what I mean? Where you jump to conclusions.
Yeah, you do have it. No,
it's a massive misogynist.
You better be bloody confident. Like, they better have literally
you have to
no women.
You have to weigh up what your sort. I think there is one group of people who do that whole commercial weighing up thing very delicately, And ironically, it is the women in estate agency. They are, you, my friend, are probably far much more of a militant feminist than most of them come across as. So they're doing great things for the industry, and they're doing great things for women, and they're getting the message out there. The fact that there is a conference that's not a conference and all of that sort of stuff, it's amazing. I'm not decrying that for a second, but there is a part of me that sometimes wants to shake them and go,
it's good.
Girls, please.
I love that
fight somebody.
Guerrilla, like, what accountability of the likes of Ellie Reese. I love that, like, fuck you, I won't be quiet. Fuck you, I'm not toning it down. And fuck you, you're out of order. Like, not that Ellie swears on social media. So, Ellie, I've just turned you into profanity-fueled monster. But no, I've always admired that.
And Nick Broom, people like that. That's the reason why actually when Nick and Ellie were both, I think, chair and vice chair of the People's Front of Judea. What were they called?
The property professional.
Women in the estate agency, and then there's women in residential property.
Weren't you on the board of it for some?
So I was allyship lead because I had all the credentials.
You were David Mintz.
But one of the things that I liked about them at the time was that they were very militant. Ellie is as militant, and she doesn't like it that people call her shouty, but she is, and she's willing to sort of ruffle a few feathers, break a few eggs to make this beautiful omelette that we're all trying to cook. And at work, actually, the sad reality is that and it's a lovely thing that it exists, but it's owned as well by a commercial entity. That commercial entity has got interests and doesn't want to necessarily piss people off. So they don't want to set the world on fire. They don't want to, and I actually think that it's a thing. We have to be mindful that there's a concerted effort and a considered effort by the boards of these organisations, including WEA, of whom we're so fond, that they have to sit in those boardrooms and they have to think, well, hang on, we are walking that very delicate tightrope. There's a part of me that wants them to say, actually, fuck this now. Can we have a conference where actually we do shout about the fact that people are afraid to go off on maternity leave because they might never ever get to come back? Can we talk about flexible work? All the boring stuff that they're going to think is very much below them because they're at a higher level. Those basic things are the things that bother people. And the things that actually small businesses up and down this country, and who form the majority of our industry, often fall foul of. They do. They're not performing.
No, I mean, I'm not sure I agree with you on the commercial aspect of, like, you have to be careful, you don't have to piss too many people off. And look, I will give it the caveat of it depends what business you're trying to build. If you're trying to build something absolutely huge that appeals to everyone or as many people as possible, then yes, you have to be careful. But that's not your typical estate agent. You also have to factor in your local community and your local audience, right? So if you are in a very traditional, old-fashioned little village with lots of people around or post-retirement age, probably don't do the gay pride display that we did a couple of years ago.
God, I thought, when you raised your arm there, I thought you were actually doing a Nazi salute then. Certainly don't do that.
Certainly don't do that. But, you think about your audience. And, when we got lambasted for that a couple of years ago, and I'm not even going to talk about the Turning Point saga, but some of the commentary that came from other agents, I specifically remember one being, "Oh my God, if we'd done that in our village, they'd have smashed our windows in." It was like, I'm not in a village.
No,
I'm in Cosmopolitan London. There's a sex toy shop across the street. There's another one off the back, and there's like 5 strip clubs within 100 meters of our front door.
Yeah,
it's fine. It is not.
It's not
Willingdon on the roll.
Yeah.
In the arse end of nowhere with so know your audience. But I do genuinely think no matter what you're doing or selling, with those caveats in mind, I think you can dig your heels in and be a bit salty, and I think you can take some big stands. And
you can do, but you have to be brave. And I just believe, though, that there is an element, and I'm not calling anybody out on this, but it is my belief that these organizations often fall short of the mark because they pull their punches because they have to play the game. And there is the long game, and I get that. The long game is I'm playing by your rules, so I'd rather have incremental progress than be thrown out of the room altogether and be told never come back again. So it takes a hell of a lot of balls. Ironically, we're talking about the feminism. Oh, well done, Dave. You need massive ovaries to walk into them rooms. No, but you do. And look, I know Stephen Brown and I recently had a very honest chat about, and I've never made any secret. I don't believe I ever could. I'm just very Jewish, right? But oy vey. But Steve, Stephen, I've known him for years, and the minute I clocked him, I knew he was one of us. But he would never openly talk about it or say anything about it. And if you were to ask him I was with him last night, we had dinner together. He's a very lovely man. And I said, that was that was really unexpected, that conversation. And he sort of explained that he has been brought up in a world where it's all right to be different as long as you don't push your differences too much. And so therefore and it can matter in business. Yeah. So I am fully aware that people have to take the wins that they can get, and the people make decisions every day not to upset the apple cart because they're going to get a little bit further than if they went in 2 feet first and said, actually, this is wrong and I want something doing about it right now. So there is that delicate balance of diplomacy. Do you know what? I do admire if I were to sort of close my eyes and try and work out almost a bit like the Queen was just always very serene in every kind of, and you could roll her out at any event and she would always say the right thing at the right. I mean, admittedly, one of her children went rogue, and I get that, but Verona.
Hold on, which one are we talking about now?
Which one of her children went rogue? No,
because there's going rogue, which is the one that skipped off to America. There's another one. Rogue.
Verona, I know they refer to her as Queen V, but she is so diplomatic. If you want a lesson in diplomacy and how to sort of hold yourself in public,
she's the queen of the corporate landscape, right? She's
You only have to look at the comment that she made on because I released a clip of us covering your comment on the thing, and it's perfectly on message. It's supporting. It's saying this is why we need women. And it's without going too hard.
Doesn't go further. Doesn't double down on doesn't answer my question. She like a great politician. but
that
reported.
My only, if I could have anything for Christmas this year, it would be that actually, let's see a little.
I'm not sure you can order Verona on your Christmas present list.
I could not afford that.
I'm not sure that's how it works.
I could not afford that. But but if I could order anything on my Christmas list, it would be that all of us take a little bit more strength to be able to say the things that we actually know will make discernible differences, to not toe the line, to not necessarily always play the game.
But I think
the establishment rely on us playing the game.
But I think an important part of that, though, is you can call someone out without calling them a cunt. You can tell someone they're being a bit cunty without making it about them. So you can do it with a smile on your face. You can do it with a hand on the shoulder. You can be like, Dad,
with love.
Dude, I love you, but what just fell out of your face is really not okay. And as someone who likes and respects you, I'm just letting you know, fall out again.
But there is the sense that, the irony of two, and I know Carla will be looking at this later on, and she'll be spitting feathers because she's going to say, right,
No, it's all right. I'm going to
privileged white men.
Don't worry about it.
Two privileged white men are chatting about women's rights again and saying that we're not made. How dare they? And all this sort of stuff. And she's right. There is a sense that when we're having this chat and we're talking about it, I'm thinking that actually, who am I to dictate to them how they do things? I just feel like I wanted a bit more.
Everyone's entitled to opinion, and every movement.
I want a bit more bra burning. I wanted that from work. I never got it. I think the charter, by the way, is a great step in the right direction, because what they're saying is, if you're saying you walk the walk, then you talk the talk. You may as well walk the walk as well. And so pin it to your company values, sign up to it, say that you do agree with it, and support women in that way. Whether or not it's actually making change, and this is what we debated on the podcast, whether or not all of these movements are actually making change for the people that need it the most.
I mean, as we always say, right, the people who need to be in the room most, we can wax lyrical about how fantastic the We Are Not conference is, the Lanyard event. We can talk about how mind-opening and mind-altering and blah, blah, blah it is, but the people who most need to be in that room are never going to be sat in that room, right?
Yeah, and I think that the message that comes out of that room is that we all have stories, we all have struggles, and you're able to share that more, and we're going to understand each other more. But is it going to change employment law and the way that it's enacted in our companies? Are we going to give, and actually, whilst we're at it, all the same 20% of the people that we see at all the conferences, the ESTAs, the Kerfuffle conference, the EA Masters, that's a small one that I've never really heard of, but EA Masters, the Negotiator Conference, all of these places, it's the same.
Don't forget RAN, my friend.
RAN, the Relocation Agent Network. But we see all the same people at the same conferences, the same kind of companies. We are pitching to the top 20%. There are a ton of women, there are a ton of people that are stuck in like little corners of the country and small estate agencies. They will never get to see Verona talking on stage. They will never get to feel the feeling in that room. How do we get them? How do we enable them, because their bosses will never pay for it, to step out of those roles and actually get into that room?
I mean, Mincy, the good news is, for anyone who reads the Telegraph, and it is where I turn to for just general amusement, really, and to remind me how batshit some people are. I mean, maybe all this stuff is done and irrelevant, because I don't know if anyone can see that. But the article that caught my eye the other day.
We're into epic mansplaining territory today already. I think we're going to get cancelled after this.
I mean, importantly, James Jeffrey of the Telegraph, the title of the article is "It's Time to Start Mansplaining Again." I'm not really sure when that stops. And then the kind of the further explanation beneath goes on to say the feminist push to silence men has been bad for everyone. I mean, if the article in that byline doesn't make you piss yourself and roll your eyes quite enough,
but you not
just go and read the 1,000 comments that sit beneath it.
Do you know when you used to sort of so when I was a kid, there were newspapers and there were newspapers. So I remember my granddad always used to read the Telegraph because it was. I remember it as being this massive
broadsheet
that you had the massive broadsheet.
Broadsheet means it must be incredibly serious, and
the Times back then was still that way as well. We all knew that Grandma read the Daily Mail because she was secretly racist.
Not always that secretly,
and she wanted a mix of celebrity gossip and Colonel Gaddafi trying to take over the world, that kind of thing. And then there were other newspapers, so you knew that the Sun was always going to give you the working man's view, and on page 3 you were going to get an eyeful. you'd get "Core Blimey, what a scorch" or whatever it was as your headline. It was taking it to the lowest common denominator. Yeah, the Daily Star, which was again another step out into, and then all the way at the end you'd have the Daily Sport, which ironically never had anything sporting in it, okay? but was always a great read, and I miss it. But what I want to say is today, in today's landscape of media, it is really, really difficult to pick up the Telegraph and consider it as serious as it once was. It is
this is the thing, right? So with the Telegraph, they had this whole thing. I don't know if it's even gone through. There was someone looking to buy them, and there was this whole thing of like, oh, we must retain our journalistic freedom and our journalistic integrity and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, you're shitting me. Have you read half the articles you've put out in the last year?
Ultimately, are you going to sell newspapers without clickbait? Are you there to hold? We had this debate about industry press, and I think we've concluded well and truly, because and actually the irony of it is that I dug up a clip of me talking about industry press 3 years ago, and Whaley said to me, I think you might want to change the title of that clip because it might mean that they reject all our press releases. But that's what we're talking about.
Much like you called out my line of saying if people can't do an elevator pitch, they clearly can't sell their product. And you were like, yeah, dude, you spent an hour fucking what it was your product does.
The point is, I want to live in a world where actually my press will hold, will talk truth to power. They will hold politicians accountable. They will not just toe the line. They won't make decisions made based on their own, commercial.
They can have an opinion, but it's substanced in verifiable facts.
So one of my favorite podcasts,
verifiable facts, and then you can have whatever opinion interpretation of those facts you want. But my favorite
podcast is The News Agents, and that is that's Emily Maitlis.
I was watching last night talking about Trump's letter to Norway.
Yeah, John Soper and Lewis Goodall. And I love their style of journalism because they've all been released from the BBC's shackles, so they're not afraid to say what they need. Freedom.
They talk a little bit more humanly. There's the odd swear word in there. Yeah. Just like highly intelligent.
And so whilst we're at it, we're now doing this weird male echo chamber that we call a podcast, which is two men who love the sound of their own voice talking to each other.
Hey, there have been plenty of women on this podcast, my friend. Hey, they give it to me.
Whilst we're at it, one of the women who was on this podcast, Ellie Reese, we were talking. She's a big voice noter. So if you are texting with her, eventually she'll go to voice note mode. And I actually think voice note is for the podcast generation, because if you're the kind of wanker as I am, who sends a voice note and then listens back to it and go, yeah.
I feel like a tingling somewhere in the Brazilian rainforest.
What's tingling in your rainforest, my friend?
Alex from Estate Apps with all this comment.
Alex was the original voice noter.
I didn't voice notes. I mean, I don't know. Do they get infiltrated by the Brazilian?
I don't know. I never understood the point of voice notes. It was halfway between sending a message and making a phone call, and they used to irritate me. But actually, I now understand why people do it. They do like the sound of their own voice. Do you remember as a kid when the first time you ever hear your own voice recorded and played back to you, and you go, "Oh God, I don't like
anything like that."
But in this day and age, we're all used to seeing ourselves recorded because we've got camera phones and everything, and it just takes a little bit of adjustment, and then you know how you speak and you know how you sound to everybody else. I think we've got to this point in life where we all like hearing the sound of our own voices. I don't know what the original discussion was, but that's where I've taken it.
We've gone from the fact that the women's
we were talking about newspapers
to somehow loving the sound of our own voices, which is, by and large, the same thing, really.
It's perfect territory for mansplaining. I think there is mansplaining, and then there's also just general arsehole splaining, where you just want to explain everything to everybody because you feel that they need to know how clever you are. And that's where I am with this whole podcast thing and the voice note thing. We've all got this opinion, and social media gives us that platform to voice the opinion. And none of us, I mean, very rarely do you come across somebody who is so insecure that they're not willing to share what they're eating on Facebook or whatever it may be. We've all been trained to sort of share now our points of view and our thing, and we love it because it makes us, we think we've got something unique to share with the world. But do we?
I mean, we're all different. We're all the same, aren't we? Don't think. And is it relevant? Is what you think ultimately relevant?
It's so cheap to put out.
It's really interesting to me.
I listen to a load of podcasts, and I love. Do you know what? The one that I love the most at the moment, it's very irreverent and it's very inappropriate. I think it's called Finn versus History or something, and it's a comedian called Finn Taylor and called Horatio Gould, and they sit on a couch and each week they go through another chapter of history. And actually, if you listen to it end to end, you will learn a lot about history. There's a lot of factual stuff in there, but they take the piss because it's hilarious stuff. And I think if you can. What I love about all of these kind of free medium is if you want people to learn and you want to spread a message, if you can make them giggle a bit at the same time, it makes it sink in a lot better.
Yeah. And look, I think, this whole array of content out there now, I mean, you bringing that up brings a couple of things to mind. I'm fascinated that basically anyone looking anything up online from any source now class that as research.
Yeah.
Had an interesting political discussion with the in-laws over New Year's Eve.
ChatGPT says,
and I got some very interesting statements made. It was like, cool. Where's that from? I mean, I've done my research. Like, can you share that source? I mean, I don't go anywhere near the BBC because they're not to be trusted. And it's like, cool, that's a good start.
It is hard though. So if you were sort of advising your kids where they should get their news from, who they should believe, my kids are all over TikTok, so they will get both sides of the argument very often, and they're getting their information from places that
question everything. I think that's the thing. No matter where it is, question everything. I think it's. I think it's really important to try and look, for a lot of people this is challenging. I would find this hard to do as well. But I think it's really interesting if you try and challenge your own perceptions, right? Try and prove yourself wrong if you can, or at least try and find things that make you question.
I had an interesting chat with one of our industry colleagues the other day in response to the whole Stephen Brown thing when we were talking about it. And they said to me, they were trying to say, look, I just want to let you know, I'm not anti-Semitic. I just want to let you know, though, I don't agree with the actions of that particular country or whatever. And I said, look, that's absolutely fine. That's fine. But when I hear you calling out that vociferously, but you remain completely silent over the last 2 weeks about what's going on in Iran, I have to question whether or not you're interested in Middle East politics, or are you just a little bit interested in what we're doing?
Yeah.
And actually, so this guy went away and he came back to me and he said, I want to thank you. I found it really challenging what you told me. And I do want to admit that actually I think my left-wing views sometimes, he said, just tend to default to, well, that's not right. So that's the path that I'm going. And I think going back to what you're saying,
you have these causes that the public latches onto, right? And that whole Free Palestine thing is something that's been latched onto so vociferously.
Yeah.
and militantly to a certain
I remember coming to your office actually, just after October the 7th, 2023, and I came for a party or whatever it was that night. And
I don't think that was ours you come to, dude. We don't.
no, dude, I was. I came to
very serious business.
Came to you. No, but I was hanging out and I was having a discussion with somebody, and she turned around to me and she said, I don't really want to talk about this with you because you'll probably be offended. I'm like, no, you can talk to me about anything. They said, well, surely I know everything that's happened on October was really bad for you guys, but surely you don't agree with cutting off people's electricity and their water and stuff. And I said, first of all, look, I don't agree with that, cutting off anybody's electricity and water. I don't get, I don't love that notion. But also I said, would you, if I was black and I was from Sudan, would you sit me down and go, here's a drink? By the way, I hate to mention this to you, but isn't it terrible what they're doing back there?
Yeah, that is GM and that machete.
There is, so I guess what I'm trying to say is there is this sense that we are, because we might have allegiance due to the fact that we're part of the same religion or whatever, or background, that you're expected to defend your actions that are actually going on in a country 2,000 miles away.
Yeah.
The Free Palestine movement, if we're going to talk about this openly, and I don't mind, what irritates me about Free Palestine is that it seems to have really sort of captured the imagination of tons of people who will never go to Palestine, never go near a Palestinian, never have met one, never have spoken openly with people in Israel. So they don't understand the complexity.
90% of those people won't even go on the internet to understand the history of why.
So there are, the death on either side and all of that is awful. It's a waste of life, all of this stuff, right? But when let me tell you that when I was on the way out of London, I'd come down for a conference, and I think I was leaving. I was in the taxi, and the taxi, you know how you pay your Uber driver in advance sometimes. So I paid £7 to this dude to take me to the station, and he was getting very pissed off, and because we kept hitting these massive Free Palestine protests, and I could tell he was really losing it with me. He turned around at some point and goes, "This isn't £7. This isn't £7." And I'm like, dude, I can't do anything about the protest. But let me tell you, my feeling of being in that car as all the protesters sort of surrounded us. First of all, I've got the taxi driver who was not happy with me in the car. And I was like, shit, he's going to find out I'm Jewish and that I've caused all these protests. Shit, I'm out. I'm going to be done.
He's going to turf me out. I'm going to roll me out the door in the middle of Free Palestine.
But on the other hand, these are not sort of peaceful protests. These are very angry people. And I actually felt as threatened as I've ever felt in my life. And I remember sort of sending somebody a text message just saying, "Listen, if I don't get to the station in in half an hour, I'm a goner here. This is not good." I think there is. I think the message.
Also, these, and again, this brings us back to the thing. I bet you half of that scary crowd you'll see on the Tommy 10 Names March. You'll see on the. They just want to be angry.
Rent a crowd.
They just want to fight. They just want to.
There was a sense. Do you remember the Stop Oil protest, which just disappeared very quickly? There was a sense that wasn't working.
People forgot about that stuff.
How
dare they close Tower Bridge?
But whatever it is, that those protests ended. They found something else to do, and a lot of that kind of. That crowd of protesters. I think there are two messages here. One is that clearly there is something in the politics of today. We are so polarized and divided that people want a cause to rally around. They want to revolt. They want to rebel. They want to say that they're not happy. They want to express themselves. And I think we, as politicians, we're not politicians, but we as people in the world, we need to sort of just be, we have to understand that this is going to keep happening unless we can converse with one another properly and we can understand each other better.
Well, there's a lot of people out there just being told how to think and how to feel about stuff, and they're just.
There is that. I think the overall point that I was trying to make.
Oh, I should be angry about this group of people because they're causing that, and it's just like, cool.
All I would say is that to anybody watching this who, and there are plenty of people who do, and bless you all, you've got your reasons for doing so. If you want to support one side more than the other, that's cool, man. I back it, and honestly, I will protest myself for your right to go out there and express yourself. But just understand that when you are calling for certain things to be done and to be said, those words have an effect. It winds somebody up. So you might be a very reasonable person. You might be out there calling to globalize an intifada. You won't know what that means. Intifada, frittata, it's all the same to me, right? But actually what it means is it's an armed uprising. What you're calling for is the death of people on our streets. So globalize it. Let's make it around the world. And who are those people? Well, you'll say, well, they're Zionists. And who are the Zionists, Kristjan?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know who they are, but the Jews must be, right? So some nutter is going to do all of that very simple math and go, right, next Saturday morning, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and do something terrible. So do I think that your average citizen going out there to protest on a Saturday afternoon directly leads to acts of terror? No, but filling the streets with hatred and inciting this kind of rhetoric is inevitably going to get extremists are extremists for a reason. They're the fringe of society that are willing to do the things that all of us are not willing to do. You are eventually going to push someone over the edge. And
I think the worrying thing at the moment, I find, is that there's this broken, divisive rhetoric everywhere. Right? You should be afraid of this. You should resent that. You should aspire to this. You should ignore that. This is everything that's wrong with your life, and this is who's at fault. There's a lot of that out there at the moment. And, like I said, to a lesser extent, having political debates with the family. The Telegraph article I referenced earlier, there's a young guy that I have quite an extended interaction with in the comment section. And again, what's fascinating there is he is very passionately in agreement with the article. And what was really interesting was reading his first couple of responses. I had in my mind that this was a guy coming towards the end of his career, maybe even early retirement, because he started off talking about how basically he now felt the need to lie at work because there were things he couldn't say. There were things he could no longer say for fear of being fired. Because I think I'd put some quote about the only people who would have shut up because of this was misogynists, and he didn't like that. Now he came back with multiple responses, very, very passionate viewpoint. It was very interesting to hear him say, because every kind of argument he made was kind of equally an argument against himself. Because he was like, "Oh, you're not quoting any fact. There's no facts behind what you're saying, so it's so easy to refute what you're saying." And you look back at his 5 previous comments, and he hasn't offered a single fact. That was him in response to me actually saying that there are facts that back up that diverse businesses grow faster, do better, more profitable, more durable, less likely to go bust. And there is data behind that, although I didn't cite the statistics. But there are very, very impassioned people, and there's nothing unjust he says in there. He kind of waffles around the point, and it remains to be seen whether he actually draws debate, because I've actually gone, cool, you're not going to convince me that this is right, and equally I'm not going to convince you, that you need to be more empathetic and understanding. So let's stop trying to convince that, because that probably wouldn't happen face to face. It definitely ain't happening in the Facebook comment section. But what I did say to him is, let's stop debating the ifs and whats and maybes. Tell me one thing. Say now one of the things you feel you can no longer say at work. Share it with me, because at the moment, like one of my comments is like, at the moment, I can only think of misogynistic, sexist, homophobic, whatever comments, because they have to be for you to be fired. But maybe I'm wrong, or maybe this young man is scared because the media makes him think that's a reality. Because what he says in there is basically, I can't express my opinion anymore. And it's like, you can express your opinion if it's valid and relevant.
You know what the issue is on both sides of that debate? And it goes also to the wider discussion on incels and all that sort of stuff that you see spoken about quite a lot, and that whole Andrew Tate crowd who are just abhorrent to me. But I think on both sides, right and left, right, there's that massive chasm that we've got. Is that that expression, this isn't the hill that I'm going to die on?
Yeah.
In actual fact, there are loads of people out there that think that is the hill they're going to die on, and they are willing to stand by their own opinion, so much so that they don't care who perishes around them in order for that opinion to be true. It is okay for you to have an opinion, and it is all right for somebody to have an opposing opinion, and nobody has to die. Literally, nobody has to die. And I think we have to be mindful these days that, unfortunately, voicing an opinion sometimes does lead to people dying. It leads to people dying on our streets. It leads to those, you can talk about, my kids keep going on about Charlie Kirk, for instance, like for them, in that my kids are as right on as they come, and my kids came out with some awful shit that day that he got shot, and I heard one of them, and and
there were some very interesting statements thrown around about that.
But on both sides, there were some very statements that what they were saying is, Charlie Kirk was a horrible, divisive person who said horrible things about trans people and homosexual people and all that sort of stuff, and therefore ... And I said, yes, ... What? Because are you trying to say that therefore it's justified, therefore it's okay? And at the end of the day, it's not. None of this shit is worth anybody losing their life.
Charlie, the only thing that Charlie Kirk talked about that in any way created the situation where he might have been shot was not his opinions. Ultimately, anyone should be allowed to have opinion. But his hill to die on was that everyone had a right to have a gun.
I realize
for me is action and consequences. Have any opinion you want, but if you think every Tom, Dick, and Harry should be allowed to walk around with a weapon, cool. But then you stand by what happens to that. You are perfectly happy with people going in and shooting up schools. You are perfectly happy with a public person being assassinated on a stage, because that is the freedom that you fought for.
Call me naive and call me old-fashioned, but I'd be perfectly happy just for a week.
I can't believe we've wafted onto the Charlie Kirk.
We've gone, if you've noticed, what we've done is we've gone from me saying that I feel like people don't express their opinion enough and openly enough when it comes to women stuff, to saying actually expressing your opinion too much leads to people dying. So we need to come somewhere in the middle. But actually, what I think is, and I think this about politics, I think this in social circles as well, and business, everything, we've lost that centrist kind of ground. There is no center. So that whole, if you were to look at Blair era, and I appreciate Tony Blair is now, Tony Blair is going to be a very divisive character in politics, because a lot of people can't get over the two wars that he was part of. But if you look at the politics of that time and the vibe of the 90s, there was a lot more. We were more down the middle. You know, we were more united.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's
And as a
what got
result-
him in, was being very centrist.
And things can only get better. It was a positive message. Nobody ever won any. No one had to win any votes by saying, "I think that this lot are terrible. We want them out of the country. I think that lot are terrible. They should be locked up." And instead, it was, "We can do better together," and that's great.
Yeah.
Where's all of that gone? How have we then woken up? And honestly, if you went to sleep like Rip Van Winkle in 1992, and then you woke up in 2026 to Donald Trump running the world, and the kind of politics that we've got here with reform and extreme left wing politics as well, you'd be like, how the fuck did this happen?
And look, and I think and this is kind of a good point for us to kind of wrap this chat up. I think my thing at the moment is, like, there is this divisiveness at the moment. Like you said, there is this polarization of every issue, whether it's women in the workplace or what race or color you are, or whether you're trans or whatever. There's this massive polarization on things at the moment. And I think, you've made a valid point. We all need to learn to chill the fuck out and to be able to have a conversation and express our opinions without judging the person that we're talking to be like, "Oh, I don't agree with your opinion, so I just don't like you as a human being." That's bullshit. I mean, okay, they've got enough things you don't agree with. Maybe they are, but let's not write someone off. And that could be, I've heard stories the last few years of families and all sorts of stuff having massive fallouts over this stuff, and but also, you've got to question, where's this coming from? What's driving this? And social media, the way social media is structured, the way our media has expanded, and how it's run now, the messaging that is shoved down everyone's throats.
Yeah.
And I think social media even more so, because mainstream media, you kind of pick your channel, whether it's BBC or GB News, whatever floats your boat, they're kind of on that. I think social media is the paradox, right? Because we all know you've got that algorithm, and the more you go into it, the more it self-affirms itself, and the more deep and ingrained and extreme that content gets. He'll be 10 minutes, promise. 10 minutes, just have the dinner ready in 10 minutes.
It's chucking out time here, It's
but no, I think my big thing at the moment is and I do blame social media a lot, and I find, like, I use social media a lot for work. Lots of people, this is like, "Oh yeah, no fucking shit, Sherlock." But I find I use it increasingly less and less for personal. For that very reason, I've just found, like, looking at attitude shifts I've noticed in people that we know and love, family, friends, whatever, and then it's like, "Oh, I've been spending too much time on social media." It didn't warp my opinions, but a few months ago, with all this Trump shit going across the pond, like, I kind of went down a rabbit hole on that for about 3 or 4 weeks, and ended up getting in quite a messy headspace, just feeling like, Jesus Christ, where are we going? Where are we going? As a and then I was like, this isn't life. I don't live in America.
But if you look at what's happening on the social media space, what's very interesting is, I think, for instance, if you were to look at LinkedIn, it's full of people saying, and I'm so guilty of this, but it's full of people saying, "Hey, I've got a really interesting thing that I need to tell you about what happened to me today, or what occurred to me, and we can apply this to a business context. And here is my thought leadership piece." But we're doing that now on every medium. So what we're doing is we're now putting out a version of ourselves to the world that is sanitized, that has to sound clever all the time, that is not vulnerable. Nobody ever really stands up and goes, "I fucked up today. I got to tell you, it was just the most embarrassing thing." That's what Facebook used to be maybe 10 years ago. It's not anymore, and you can't be overly funny. Everybody has to sort of, that personal brand of, "I'm still Kristjan and I still need to toe the Christian." So I think, look, we need to be more forgiving. and we need to find a way that we can be our authentic selves, and without actually, you don't need to be right all the time. It's fine. It's okay.
You don't need to agree all the time as well. You can go out and
Well, I don't agree with that.
Or some family without agreeing on stuff. Just avoid it if it's too impossible to talk about. You know, like if you know you're not going to meet in the middle, if you know you're not going to be able to.
Can I offer you a compliment before we wrap up? Can I offer you a compliment? This is probably the only podcast where you can go from Verona Frankish to Charlie Kirk very, very quickly. I don't know anyone else that could do that. So, well,
you know, we've nailed it. We've nailed it.
Blast.
All right, dude. Well, listen, my beautiful man.
I don't know if this is a podcast or just another one of our phone calls. So, anytime.
That's literally what I'm building a podcast around. It's the chats. What's it going to be about? Everything.
Everything.
But podcasts work really well if you focus in on a topic. That's great.
Guys, don't judge. I'm a really nice guy, real life.
Oh, dude, always a joy, always a pleasure.
Much love to you and the wider family. Take care.